we are just at the midpoint of winter here in Toronto, and for many people in the real estate business, that means a bit of a rest period before the local housing market heats up. Will it be another frantic spring of buying and selling? Well, if so, and if you're a homeowner, well, lucky you. But if you're looking to buy a house in the next few months, you may have to brace yourself.
Our guest is Mark Mclean, the current president of the Toronto Real Estate Board, which represents more than 42,000 brokers and salespeople in the GTA. Mark is also a manager and broker with the venerable Bosley Real Estate firm in Toronto, and he's been in the local real estate business for more than 20 years. Mark, welcome.
Welcome.
And, well, thanks for being here. And before we get into questions about the current market, tell us a little bit about the Toronto Real Estate Board. We all know what it is, but I'm not sure that we know exactly what its mandate is and how it helps consumers.
Think a little bit about the history of real estate. You know, there was a time when if you wanted to sell your house, you'd talk to sort of your local, realtor kind of guy, but he wasn't really part of any organization. And so the Toronto Real Estate Board's been around since the 50s, a collection of people. We have a strong MLS system. We are...
That's multiple listing service?
Multiple listing service, yeah. And we have a bunch of different committees that work on everything from condo development to government relations, you name it. And so it's really becomes a great source for realtors, great education, and then those sort of things that come along with that.
Okay, well, how does one become the president of the Toronto Real Estate Board? Do you get elected, or what's the process?
Well, you do get elected, and it was a very interesting process. You know, I've been a realtor for such a long time, and it was really getting into that, donating my time, volunteering, and I really got a taste for the excitement that comes, because really there's all this, when you're just a realtor on the street, you don't really understand all the stuff that kind of goes on behind the curtain.
Right.
And being a volunteer was an amazing experience, and the last committee that I was on was the leadership committee. Well, they were looking for leaders, and I thought, I think I'm a leader.
Did you put your name forward?
So I put my name forward, and I got onto the board of directors, and then I did 2 years there, and then I ran for president and was elected by my peers.
Right, and so you have a mandate of your own to carry the real estate.
Yeah, I mean, I think every president comes in with a mandate,
right.
And
or a
last year,
vision, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, last year we had a great president whose mandate was to say to promote the value of home ownership, and I didn't really want to mess with that. That was such a great mandate.
Is important.
So sure. I think to try and really work that, but to also get people to understand that Toronto is this global city, and get realtors to recognize that they're also ambassadors for our city as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the market, because everybody in Toronto, it's probably the #1 topic on everyone's mind.
Sure it is.
And it seems that every year for the last several anyway, we hear that the Toronto real estate market is out of control. Mm-hmm. And in fact, just this week, your organization published a report that showed that increases in sales in January, year over year, were up 8%, over 8%, and average house prices were up over 14%.
How much can that continue?
Yeah, I mean, prices, especially for private detached homes, just seem to get more and more insane, and yet people somehow are able to buy them. What is going on?
Well, I think you have to look at the big picture, and for me, the big picture is that we are a global city. We're an alpha city. We're at least approaching alpha city status, and I think that's.
Sorry, what do you mean by alpha city?
Well, I think I like to sort of make that comment that people talk about us as a mega city. It really drives me crazy, because mega to me is just dirty and gross and grimy and crime infested.
That refers to size, I think, too. Yeah.
And what I like to think is that we are really this sort of alpha city, which is where the center of where things happen. We are the head of the, we have all our banks are here. We have hospitals here. We have, entertainment and education, universities. All
so we have a good combination of things that make for a city.
Yeah, we're really well-rounded, and as a result of that, we have incredible immigration. We've got hundreds of thousands of people that come to Canada every year, and a good chunk of them stay in Toronto because they're great job opportunities. So we are really a city that keeps attracting the very best, and I think that's not going to continue. That's going to continue going into the future. So you look at that as sort of your basis. And across the country, the markets, there are markets that change. I mean, there are some markets that are down, some markets that are up. Vancouver and Toronto being great examples of that. And the reason is we've got this great infrastructure. We've got lots of people that make a tremendous amount of money. We've got all those things that I talked about, banks and legal firms,
all the
and
infrastructure.
accounts, all the infrastructure is there.
Right.
Plus the and we've got great real estate base.
So I've got to ask you, with all of these homes being going up and being bought, and all the condos that are, they seem to be springing up on every corner and in between.
Every weekend.
Yeah. Is there truly what we've heard is a housing shortage in Toronto, or is it a shortage of affordable housing?
Well, I think affordable, it's starting to get to that point where it gets very tricky. But what I would say about that is that humans are resilient, and if you find that you can't afford something, you'll figure out a way to make it affordable. And so what I mean by that is, I want to buy a house. Well, I can't buy a house unless maybe I have a tenant in the basement, right? So basement apartments are becoming
an income source.
Yeah,
there.
Income source.
Yeah.
And literally in the last I don't know, maybe 6 months, we've been hearing a lot about co-buying, co-purchasing. So that's two people who want to go in on a house together, kind of thing, and maybe like find a duplex or something like that. So now you're looking at, let's say, an $800,000 house, which is now $400,000. So I think we're adaptable in that regard.
Just mentioning values, it seems to me that I think the Treb report actually said the average price of a house in Toronto now is about $650,000, which I find staggering because, in fact, I don't think you can buy a house for less than $650,000. So if that's an average, that would suggest that there are houses still available for $290,000 or something like that. Where is that
Do they
happening in
exist?
Toronto? Because
Well,
everything seems to be over $1 million.
You are thinking, when you're talking about a household average, right? You're talking about condos and houses.
Well, true. You add the
So you do
condos
add that into the fray. But I think there are parts of the city where you can buy a $500,000 house. I think they do exist. East
Or
York
less,
is a great.
yeah.
Or sure, yeah. East York is a prime example. Also Weston, that kind of area, you can get some great. There's some
Right.
great
So
value.
the farther away you get from Yonge Street.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So you press the outer edges of the city.
Yeah.
But we keep hearing about this bubble. Inevitably, this real estate bubble is going to burst at some point. Will it? And what would that look like if the housing
Year
market
after
doesn't?
year, the bubble's going to burst, and it hasn't burst in 25
yes, exactly.
years.
They have said they've been saying that for such a long time.
Yeah.
And again, I go back to that sort of alpha city status. If you look at some of the big centers around the world that really didn't have much of a downturn in the last recession. But I think that we're a very strong city, and we're built on immigration. We're getting over 100,000 people into our city every year. And if you look at the greater picture, the big picture, Greater Golden Horseshoe, in the next 15 years is going to have 12 or 13 million people, 9 million of that in the GTA. So you're getting a lot of people that are coming for the reasons that I said earlier.
But they're mostly renters, aren't they? Or many of them?
No, and
they're buyers.
They're buyers for sure. Yes, there are a lot, but don't forget there are also people who are buying homes to rent. So they're filling in the gaps as well.
Right,
Yeah,
and we see that a lot with
outside
condos,
investors.
presumably.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Mark, most of us have friends who are realtors. There, as we mentioned off the top, there are 42,000 who are members of Treb. And we think that they must be just raking in commissions in these boom years that keep going year after year. But many of the realtors that I know tell me, and I'm sure tell Helen, that, we hate these markets. We hate the frenzy that's going on. It's huge pressure on them. Tell us a little bit about why it's not a fun time for realtors when everything is just so
busy,
broiled up.
Well, there used to be, we used to make a comment about prospecting and say that, you'd have to talk to 50 people to get one real estate deal. And now what you're doing is you're talking 50 people to get one chance at a real estate deal, because now you're showing up at an offer where there could be 10 or 12 other people, fighting it out for one house. So a lot of agents will tell you, that they're just exhausted from all these offers. And the problem with
a lot of false starts, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of false starts. A lady in my office finally got a house just a couple of weeks ago. It was their 6th try.
Wow.
So you get to that point where you start to think, ugh, I'm done. I can't do it. And we saw that in the tail end of 2015, where come December, we'd already hit some real solid records as far as number of homes sold. And when I was talking to agents, they're saying, my buyers are done. They are going to wait until the spring. And so now I think what's going to happen is you've got the existing demand from last year on top of the demand that's going to happen this year. I think we're going to be a very busy market over the next coming months.
Okay.
Is waiting till spring a very good idea? Because it seems to me that everything just starts to go crazy again about the middle of March, just after March break.
Yeah, for sure. And what I've said to some of my agents too is if you've got people that are looking to buy, and now's the time. This is back in December. Now's the time to get them in there, because maybe the choices aren't there. But a good realtor is going to also have a number of people in their stable who can help you with cleaning up or doing kitchens or doing bathrooms or floors and stuff. So the choice is less, but the prices are a little bit less. And I said, if you wait an extra 2 months, you're going to be paying 10% more. Wow. That's a good chunk of money.
Yeah, but a lot of people are going to wait because maybe they just don't have the money, or they can't get that down payment together. And that is, it always amazes me. How do people who are of, they have a good income combined, say they're a $125,000 a year couple.
Household income,
which is very
Still
good.
pretty good,
Yeah, very good. How do they scramble together a down payment? How can they afford to get into the market?
Well, what we know about what's happening in the market, at least in the GTA, is that 60% of the people who are buying now are first-time buyers. So where are they getting their money? Well, if they're buying under $1 million, they've got that CMHC insurance that kicks in. But I think a lot of them are getting money from parents as well.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the bubble. If the bubble bursts, and as I mentioned, it seems to me the last time there was a dip in house prices was about 1990, when they went down maybe 10 or 20%, which wasn't all that terrible at the time.
Right.
And frankly, it bounced back pretty quickly. So is this bubble that we're all waiting to burst, is a burst bubble such a bad thing anyway? Wouldn't it be kind of a nice correction in the market, particularly for those young people who are trying to get in?
Well, I think about the market in terms of nationally, and a lot of people would say that we are in a declining market, except for Toronto and Vancouver, right? So I think that when the market takes a downturn, it's affected in different locations differently, and I don't believe that Toronto will see a significant drop in prices. I think that what they always sort of claim that sort of soft landing, and what I see just in the people that I talk to and the research that we've done at TREB is that the best case scenario is, or the worst case scenario will be just a sort of flattening out, maybe 1 or 2% price growth.
So what is the big attraction in home owning? I mean, it's a lot cheaper and probably less work. You don't have to worry about snow shoveling and gardening and all of those. If you're renting, to be a renter. And so why don't more people choose condo rental or apartment rental over home owning? Is that something that's very Canadian or very Torontonian, if I could put it that way?
I think that one of the messages that we've been sort of driving home at TREB is that owning a home is one of the best things that you can do for overall wealth. I mean, if you're going to have a portfolio, you're going to have real estate, you're going to have stocks, you're going to have a bunch of things, right? But owning a home is fantastic. It provides you a roof over your head, number one. But it's an
investment.
It's an investment, but I look at it more. I mean, it's a roof over your head, but it's on the long term. What it does is it provides that tax-free savings, right? It is forced savings. So the money that you're paying really goes to yourself. And at some point when you decide to sell or retire and move to a small town, you've made all this profit and it's tax-free.
New regulations are coming into place this month in Canada, which are going to increase the minimum down payment that you have to pay to buy a house. It's going from 5% to 10%, and the government's rationale for this is so that it won't allow people in who are going to get in over their heads.
Right, what we saw in the U.S.
Exactly, what effect do you think that will have on the local real estate market?
Yeah, I don't think that it's going to have too much of effect on in the downtown core, because the price points are high, and if you're selling a house and buying something, let's say over $1 million, the money that you're going to have to add to that is really not that much. I mean, we're talking $10,000 or $15,000. But look at this. The overall idea behind this is meant to cool a hot market. And so it's meant to, you can't just cool by coming in and doing a blanket sort of ruling and change mortgage rules in one particular market. It has to be broad-based. So the reason they've done this is to kind of just help kind of cool Toronto and Vancouver. So in the outside those cores, in the prairies and all, it's not really going to do much because the price point is low. But in Toronto, it may just tap the brakes a little bit,
but not burst the bubble.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. One more question about, I have to ask about the land transfer tax, which is, up to 2% of the purchase price of a home. It can be a very crippling amount to an already large amount that people are shelling out. What's the TREB's, Toronto Real Estate Board's position on the tax, and what should be done? Should it be,
Sure. The Toronto Real Estate Board's had a very specific role in this, and we've said right from the get-go this is a really unfair tax, and we will continue to fight that as long as we possibly can. But recognize that when this tax brings in $500 million to the city, and it's a cash cow. So
the city needs it.
Yeah, and the city needs it for sure.
Home buyers.
Yeah, that's the thing. So it creates all this. It creates this huge amount of money for the city. I don't think it's going to go away. But what we need to do is sort of look at it and say, okay, hang on a second here. When this land transfer tax was first brought in, we made about $300 million. So now we're making 500. It's a huge gap. And when it was brought in, there was some reliefs that were put in place so that if you were a first-time buyer, there would be a few reliefs there.
We've got to end it right there, Mark. But thank you. This has been very elucidating. Appreciate you being here. And we'll be back with more Toronto Files after this short break.